there are plenty of sanctions, by the way. IAEA, Security Council, primary sanctions, secondary sanctions. They were all mentioned in this line, in this
Yeah,
paragraph.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And yeah,
I
I
just say
think,
clearly Iran's thought it through.
yeah. But looking at the way that they wrote this document, it seems nothing of, there is nothing absolute in this document, but it's a path towards some sort of serious negotiations, in my opinion. That's why they
Well,
put it this way.
what about the first paragraph,
The
number
first
one?
one, the first one is so serious. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's very specific, and it's immediate and permanent. Those are very. Those aren't weasel words. Those are quite declarative.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, the same with number 8. So you're on to number 8.
Yeah, yeah. Number 8, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not produce or develop nuclear weapons. The United States and Iran have agreed to resolve the disposition of stockpile enriched materials pursuant to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon in accordance with the schedule mentioned in paragraph 7. In paragraph 7, the schedule, it depends on the sanctions, the way that they're releasing the sanctions. The 8 is dependent on 7, which is the sanctions from IAEA,
Right.
UN Security Council, primary and secondary sanctions. It's all related to that. And in accordance to the schedule mentioned in the paragraph 7, with minimum methodology to be down blending on site under the supervision of IAEA. The two parties also agreed to discuss the issue of enrichment and other mutually agreed matters related to Iran's nuclear needs. So they're going to downblend the Iranian enriched uranium in Iran, not outside of Iran,
Right.
as Donald Trump was talking about it before.
Yeah, and I mean and again, that's an important concession by the United States. I mean, as you read, there are people in Iran that are complaining. They feel that Malachi sold them out. The Zionists and neocons certainly believe that Trump sold them out. So that kind of reaction from both sides tells you that this agreement actually may have some teeth and be valid. So it is, and that particular clause right there, I think, has some teeth to it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's dependent on the number 7, the point number 7, which is related to the Iranian sanctions on Iran. It's important. These two are related to each other. And number 9, pending the final deal, the United States and Iran agree to maintain the status quo. Iran will maintain the current status quo of its nuclear program. What is the status quo of Iranian nuclear program? Since the war started, Iran didn't produce any enriched uranium in Iran. That's why they're talking about the status quo, Larry. And it means that they will not produce any enriched uranium, to my understanding. That's why they're talking about the status quo. And the United States will not impose any new sanctions. And any new sanctions
let me just interrupt to point out that it looks like they're just going to be working from the JCPOA. That a lot of the language, a lot of things they'd already agreed upon previously in the JCPOA can easily be adapted to this stuff.
Yeah. And the United States will not impose any new sanctions and will not deploy additional forces in the region. It's the rest of the paragraph. And here is number 10. The United States undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU, sanctions waivers will be issued for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, and derivatives, and all associated services, including banking transactions, insurances, and transportation, etc. So this is important as well.
Right.
It's so important, yeah. And they're
Yeah, and
basically,
again, immediately issuing waivers, not waiting for some benchmark that Iran has to meet.
yeah, it's so important because this energy sector of Iranian economy was under the sanctions at least for the last 7 years. They couldn't send anything out because of the sanctions, transactions, insurances, because it's all related to each other. It's not about sending oil or exporting oil. You have to have the transactions, you have to have the insurances, transportation, all of that together. And during this war, many of those or considerable number of those tankers, Iranian tankers, were hit because of the blockade. I don't know how many of them. 4 of them were hit.
Yeah,
You remember?
yeah.
It's
Well,
something like,
they fired on Iran fired on one, and then the other three turned around and retreated. I'm not sure they fired on all four, but they fired enough to make them all four get reverse course.
yeah. Here is number 11. The United States undertakes to make fully available for use of the frozen and restricted funds of Iran upon the implementation of this MOU. The United States and Iran will mutually agree on the procedures related to the release of these funds during the negotiations. It's going to be a gradual process during the negotiations, and it's all about Iranian frozen assets and restricted, because there are two sort of assets, Iranian assets in the West. One of them are those frozen assets, the other one are restricted ones. And it's a huge complexity to explain what is the difference between the two.
Right.
Yeah. And here is number 12.
Yeah,
A
12 is just procedural.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
it's just an
13, the
admin.
same. Yeah. And the monitoring mechanism will be established to supervise the implementation of MOU and subsequent final agreement. And number 13 is after signing this MOU and subject to the beginning of the implementation of paragraph 1, 4, 5, 10, 11, and the United States and Iran will start negotiations regarding the final deal. And then the last point or paragraph is the final deal will be endorsed by UN Security Council resolution.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, here is let me just send the link. Professor Marandi going to join us, Larry, in a moment. Let me just.
My interpretation of the first clause of this agreement is this is what you'd call a complete game changer, because one, it essentially gives Iran permission to attack Israel if Israel continues to violate the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon without fear of U.S. reprisal. The language doesn't say that. What it says specifically is that the United States and Iran together agree to guarantee the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. Okay? So what happens if that integrity is being violated? Well, then the Islamic Republic of Iran has an obligation to act to protect that territorial integrity. And as long as it's not attacking U.S. forces, that therefore it's almost like giving Iran straight up permission to go after Israel if they remain in Lebanon.
Yes, and it basically reaffirms that the United States believes or accepts that the Israeli occupation of Lebanon is not legitimate.
Exactly. I mean, that in and of itself is huge. That uh, that I never thought you'd get the Trump administration to agree to something like that. That I think is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah. Professor Marandi, I think you've read the document, the 14-point plan, and this is official right now. What is important in this 14-point plan in the eyes of Iranians?
I think the most important thing is the fact that um, everything has to, every action that Iran takes has to be reciprocated by the Americans. In other words, Americans have to carry out their obligations for Iran to make any move forward. So the issue of Lebanon, until it is resolved, the Iranians will not move forward with any action
Yeah.
Any free? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. You're
my
back. You're back.
connection seems to be
Professor
not
Man,
the
you're back.
best. Yeah, yeah, so the whether it's the release of Iran's assets or the sovereignty of Lebanon or the waiving of sanctions, all of these have to take place in order for Iran to reciprocate. So right now the siege has been lifted. Iranian ships have been moving back and forth without any harassment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my connection's not very good.
You
You're okay now. You're okay.
you're
Okay, so
okay. Yeah.
yeah, so for example, right now Iranian ships are moving back and forth without harassment. Uh, the issue, but all of these issues now will be linked to Iran's actions in the Strait of Hormuz. If the United States does not abide by its side of the bargain, the Iranians will not be abiding by their side of the bargain. And this is going to make it difficult for Trump because I didn't see Trump's interview, but I read about it, but I think he said that uh, energy reserves are like weeks away from finishing, or oil reserves are.
Yeah. Said that.
Uh, did you see the interview? I didn't see it personally,
Yeah, he
but I
said
Was
it.
it?
think he's. What did he say exactly?
He said that, yeah, the same sentence that you used, that we are weeks away from, the energy market is somehow on the verge of some sort of collapse, and we are weeks away from huge sort of problems. And
So he knows that if he does not carry out his commitments, that those energy markets are very vulnerable, and it the movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz in the coming weeks are not going to be very fast because it's going to take time because of the problems that insurance companies face, the problem that the that with regards to the security of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, there are many problems that exist right now. And so it's not as if things are going to be resolved overnight and that the amount of energy flowing or amount of goods flowing from the Strait of Hormuz is going to go back to normal anytime soon. So if the Americans don't abide by their commitments, all the Iranians have to do is halt or slow down the pace in which these ships, which are already, as I said, not going to be normal in number anytime soon, and that would create chaos in the market. So this is leverage. This is the Iranians have a lot of leverage to force the Americans to carry out their side of the bargain.
Yeah, and let me just add in there and I was explaining to Nima earlier. Um, so they got the 60 days that Iran's going to allow ships to go through for free, but the reality is I don't think there will be very many ships at all moving, simply because the mines that are in the Persian Gulf have not been removed yet. And if the Department, U.S. the Pentagon is to be believed, or last testimony, the Department of War officials gave to Congress, they said it would take up to 6 months. So it really, because initially you could read this and say, oh, well, Iran's being denied 2 months of income. Not really. These are 2 months that actually you can give away, and Iran doesn't lose anything, simply because the other mitigating factors.
Yeah, because the number of, as you rightly point out, the number of ships that are going to be passing through are not going to be the normal numbers that pass through under ordinary circumstances. It will take time, and probably much more than 2 months, for the number of ships to pass through in the numbers that we saw before the war. And so the Iranians.
Well, can I ask you a question? Iranian tankers, who insures those? Are those insured by the government of Iran, or are they without insurance? Because I'd say the insurance would be one of the limiting in the London, City of London-based maritime insurance industry. They're not going to allow these ships to move until they got a guarantee that they're not going to get blown up.
Yeah, Iranian ships don't have that problem. They, since they are sanctioned, and since they cannot receive insurance, they are insured by the Iranians.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw Sunday night, those were the ships you saw immediately moving. Iranian tankers coming and going.
Well, there's also another reason, and that is that Iran has not yet opened the strait. The opening of the strait is in a couple of days.
But Professor Marandi, here is what in the point number 10, it says the United States undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU, sanctions waivers will be issued for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products and derivatives, and all associated services, including banking, transactions, insurances, and transportation, and so on and so forth, etc. It says. So this is somehow, this is, in this point, they're addressing the issue that you've just raised with the case of the insurances and the transportation.
That's right. It's going to make Iranian oil easier to sell. It's going to make it easier for ships to move back and forth. And Trump actually needs this too, because he wants to keep the price of oil low. So as Larry alluded to this point, Iranian, because of the issue of insurance, alongside other problems, many of these ships are not going to be too eager to swiftly move through the Strait of Hormuz. But in the case of Iranian ships, they are already traveling through. As I said, because the other ships still don't have the time for those ships to pass through has not yet arrived. But Iranian ships don't have the problems of insurance that those other ships have. The Iranians during these years have been moving back and forth without being able to, or without having to, get insurance from major international insurance companies. Remember, the Iranian market is overwhelmingly Chinese, and the other ships that the oil that is sold elsewhere is limited, and they have their own mechanism to doing that. But again, for the ships that travel to Europe, to the United States, and other parts of the world, they have serious problems that they have to resolve before they begin moving in large numbers.
Let me, Professor, ask you another question. That you were saying you're being accosted on the streets. I mean, said a little bit in jest, but that there were a lot of upset Iranians thinking that this was another sellout. That have you encountered now people calming down a little bit, saying, "Oh, okay, this isn't as bad as we thought"?
Well, I usually go on to the different squares at night, every night, but very briefly. And so during the last 3-4 nights, I've experienced some of these discussions and criticisms. And it's anecdotal, so I really can't gauge what percentage they are, and I what the percentages are. And I haven't seen any polls during the last couple of days to see where people stand. But there are those that are critical of the negotiators and saying that this is the assurances given by the Americans are not enough. Deal. But I think there are also many on the streets and others who I meet during the day who.
Yeah. It seems
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, he's freezing up a little bit. But
Yeah.
I was just going to add to what he's saying that the first clause of this agreement, the first point, is the most important because it is very specific that the United States is not going to attack and use any kind of violence against Iran.
Yeah.
So
I think the other important point, Larry, is the one that is talking about the Strait of Hormuz and how Iran is going to manage the Strait of Hormuz. Even with the mining operation, it's going to be all dependent on Iran. No one else going to get there to do that for Iran or for the, for the Strait. And this is totally aligned with the Iranian concept that we are here, no military equipment, no destroyers, nothing is gonna, no military ship gonna get through the Strait of Hormuz. And I think the final point for Iranian is that.
yeah. So this is significant, and I've just been reading some of the comments by the Democrats and Republicans who are just, oh my God, are they upset? Oh Lord, this is the end of the world as we know it. They should be singing.
Yeah. Professor Marandi just confirmed that the United States and Iran digitally signed the MOU. Is that correct? Because it was reported by Axios.
Yes, the foreign ministry spokesman has been on television for a live program. Before him, Dr. Ghalibaf was on television, and they both had long interviews. And the foreign ministry spokesman is still speaking right now, and he confirmed that he said that it was supposed to be signed before he came on air on television. So I assume it's been signed.